Hello everyone, welcome back to PC Species. Today we are comparing the RTX 3060 12GB against the RTX 5060 8GB, and we are doing that because there's a lot of noise on the internet about how 8GB VRAM is not enough in 2025, and that is true. But VRAM cannot be the only metric based on which you buy a graphics card, and that is what we aim to clarify through this video. So we are going to take a look at some benchmarks and then discuss it a little more after the benchmarks are done. So let us start. Before that, I'd like to let you guys know that I have tested all the games on 1080p at the maximum possible settings, and along with that, I'm using the RTX 3060 12GB as the 100% scale, and on that scale, we'll measure the RTX 5060 8GB. So let us start with the benchmarks. The first game that we have is Delta Force 1080p Extreme Preset. Here the 5060 is 25% faster than the 3060. Then we have Forza Horizon 5 1080p Extreme Quality. Here the 5060 is 51% faster. In Helldivers at 1080p Ultra Preset, the RTX 5060 is 42% faster. In Cyberpunk 2077 1080p Ultra Settings, Ray Tracing and DLSS set to Quality, the RTX 5060 is 49% faster. Then we have Ghost of Tsushima 1080p Very High Quality. Here the RTX 5060 is 35% faster. In God of War Ragnarok 1080p Ultra Quality, the RTX 5060 is 51% faster. In Horizon Forbidden West 1080p Very High Quality, the RTX 5060 is 48% faster. Then we have Black Myth Wukong 1080p at Cinematic Quality, and as always, when the FPS drops below 60, I use actual FPS numbers instead of the percentages. So here the RTX 3060 was good for 26 FPS and the RTX 5060 for 40 FPS. Now we take a look at Assassin's Creed Shadows 1080p Ultra High Maximum Ray Tracing. Again, FPS below 60. So RTX 3060 is good for 22 FPS and the RTX 5060 is good for 32 FPS. Now this chart represents the average of all the games that we have already taken a look at, and based on that, the RTX 5060 is 41% faster than the RTX 3060 despite its lower VRAM capacity. Now we are going to take a look at some scenarios where the VRAM actually got saturated. So let's take a look at those. First up, we have Monster Hunter Wilds 1080p Ultra and Ray Tracing set to High. Here the RTX 5060 is 32% slower than the RTX 3060. But let me show you something interesting. If we take a look at the actual FPS numbers, the RTX 3060 was good for 31 FPS and the 5060 just for 21. So despite the RTX 3060 being faster, I would consider both of these cards to be incapable of playing this game at these settings. Another game we took a look at is Oblivion Remastered 1080p Ultra Quality, RT Lumen set to Ultra. Here the RTX 3060 was 11% faster than the 5060. But again, if we take a look at the actual FPS numbers, the 3060 was good for 27 and the 5060 was good for 24. Again, even in Oblivion Remastered, both of the cards were rendered incapable of playing this game at these kinds of settings. So we are going to move on to the settings that are more conducive to this class of cards. If we take a look at Monster Hunter Wilds at 1080p medium, the 5060 comes back as faster than the 3060 and by 41%. If we take a look at the actual FPS numbers, the 3060 was stuck at 39 FPS, whereas the 5060 got us to 55. Oblivion Remastered 1080p, dialed down to medium settings. The 3060 is 37% slower than the 5060, and in terms of actual average FPS as well, the 3060 is good for 57, whereas the 5060 was good for 78. Let's take a look at the prices as well. So for a new RTX 3060 12GB, you'll have to shell out 26,190 rupees, and for the 5060, it's nearly 30,000 rupees. As we have seen from the charts, the RTX 5060, despite its lower VRAM buffer of 8GB, is still around 40 to 45% faster than the 3060 12GB. Why does that happen? Because VRAM is not the only thing that is going to matter when you're buying a graphics card. The core has to be strong as well. So no matter how good a tire you can use Pirellis on your motorcycle or on your car, but if the engine is only 100 cc's, you're not going to get anywhere fast. So this is the problem. Even if you have to take VRAM into consideration, I'd say do that with the same class of cards. So if you compare a 5060 Ti 16GB with the 5060 Ti 8GB, that is where you base your purchase on the VRAM. The same goes for the 9060 XT, 16GB variant versus the 8GB variant. You do that and you can base your purchase on the VRAM. So again, another example would be I've seen a lot of people who are trying to test the RTX 5060 Ti 16GB against the 5070, which only has 12GB of VRAM. But then again, you have to consider that the RTX 5060 is a tier above. The core is much faster. So on average, the 5060 is around 30% faster than the 5060 Ti, even at 1440p. So again, VRAM cannot be the only metric based on which you make your purchase decision. Take a look at the other specs as well. Now, if you had to buy new, I'd say that you do not go for the RTX 3060 because it is just 3 or 4,000 rupees cheaper than the 5060, but the 5060 is around 40% faster. So despite the extra VRAM, the 3060 is going to be slower. Now, on the used market, if you can find a 3060 12GB for around 16, 17 or maybe even 18,000 rupees with maybe around a year or so of warranty left, you can go for that. Another scenario would be if you already have the RTX 3060 12GB. Is the RTX 5060 worth the upgrade? I'd say no, because around 40% of performance uplift, but then again, you're going to be getting lesser VRAM. So you can instead dial down the settings of the games that you play. And I think the RTX 3060 12GB will last you for another generation or so. Again, with the price increase, with the price of the RTX 5060 with its 8GB VRAM, I do not recommend that you upgrade from the 3060 to the 5060. I'd say that you wait and then go for maybe a 16GB card, maybe a 9060 XT. And if you're into 3D and productivity as well, then maybe a 5060 Ti 16GB, which is also poor value. But again, the lesson from this video is that do not only look at the VRAM, look at the other aspects as well. So justifying a 3060 12GB over a 5060 for the price that it is being sold at new is not all right. So this is it for this video. I just wanted to do this comparison because we also got a comment where a guy was asking me if he should go for the 3060 12GB variant over the 5060. It would not make any sense. I'm not trying to defend the RTX 5060. It's not a very good card. It is extremely average, not too good. But then again, the 3060 12GB new at 26,000 rupees is not going to be a good buying decision. So this is it for this video. And if you like the content, please like the video because it is going to help us a lot, not only to get us more views, but also, you know, to scale up, to beat the algorithm. Now we need more views. We need the channel to grow in order to be able to do these kinds of tests with actual graphics card units as well. So please like the video if you like the content. Also subscribe to the channel and we'll see you in the next one.